I figure that gospel is a moderately familiar one. Good chunk of you have heard that at least once before. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. Better to have one hand in heaven than have two hands in the unquenchable fire of Gehenna. So first things first. This is the number one gospel I jump to whenever I have to deal with someone who insists that we have to read the Bible literally, word for word. If anybody tries to pull that on you, give them a quick once-over. If they have two hands and two eyes, they're hypocrites. All right? Letting your eye wander and looking at an attractive person when you have little to no honorable intention. That is a sin that literally everyone is guilty of. At the very least, every adult is guilty of. So if you're going to say that we have to take the Bible literally at face value, you better be ready to pluck out your eyeball and throw it in the trash. Otherwise, that argument rings hollow. I'll also take this opportunity to remind you that none of the disciples cut off their own hands or plucked out their eyes, the very people that Jesus was speaking to. And the point here is that, like so many things in life, we should avoid the extremes. The extremes are what get us into trouble. So one extreme is thinking like this, that we have to take the Bible word for word at face value, cut off your own hand if that's what the Bible tells you to do. That's one extreme thinking. The other extreme is saying that the Bible is not important, that we don't need to read it, or that we can change the Bible whenever we feel like it. That is equally foolish. Because as a matter of fact, I'm not sure which is worse. Cutting off your own hand or ignoring the Bible for your entire life. Both of those options are so enormously bad. I'm not comfortable choosing one over the other. No, the wise and virtuous path is the middle way. We absolutely should read the Bible and take Jesus seriously, but we also need to use reason and think through what exactly Jesus is trying to tell us in the first place. And here's what Jesus is trying to teach us in this gospel reading. He is, with powerful language, explaining to us that our actions in life matter and that we are called to avoid sin. Avoiding sin is good. It is worth the pain and the inconvenience that effort brings about. Avoiding sin is good, even if it feels like you're losing more than you're gaining, that you might even be losing a hand or an eye. It's still worthwhile. When people are religious and they have Jesus in their lives, that's to their credit, yay Jesus, but if they still haven't gotten this idea that it's important to know the difference between right and wrong, it's important to fight against sin, if someone doesn't have that part of their faith, really down, we have a term for that. The term is cheap grace. Cheap grace is when we take the suffering and death of Jesus for granted, as if we're not called to work or suffer for our faith. There was one comedian, I forgot what his name was, but one comedian, he summarized cheap grace so perfectly. He said, oh yeah, I understand Christianity. I completely understand Christianity. It's all about John 3:16. One righteous guy died and took one for the team so that the rest of us can lead horrible, selfish lives and then get into heaven at the last minute, for free. Maybe that's funny. But it's obviously not true. Like when you say it out loud, it is obviously not true. Jesus did not suffer and die on the cross so that we could live selfish, careless lives. That is clearly not the idea, but that is what cheap grace is all about. That's what cheap grace is selling. saying, hey, we're all going to the same place, so why get bent out of shape about anything? Who cares if I cheat on my taxes, never come to church, and always leave the toilet seat up? I was baptized, I went to religious ed for a couple of years when I was a kid, I'm going to be fine. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to meet my mistress at the casino, where I buy my drugs. I was trying to think of someone really extremely into cheap grace, and all I can think of is, for my mom, the toilet seat thing would be like that's a cardinal rule in my parents' house. So hopefully you don't know anybody that's exactly like that, but that's the problem with cheap grace, and it's not how that's supposed to work. Had to collect my thoughts, sorry about that. So, don't misunderstand me, please. Jesus did suffer and die on the cross for sinners. That is true. And salvation is available and is open for everyone. Our faith is universal. That is absolutely true. It is a universal faith. But the problem is it's not cheap. And it's not convenient, and it's not easy. I'm sorry if no one's explained that to you before. Faith has never been easy or automatic. Faith is an adventure. And like an adventure, it has meaning precisely because it may expose you to danger. And success is not automatically guaranteed. Our actions in life matter. They really do. And that means that some decisions are better than other decisions. Some decisions are so bad, they're basically the same thing as jumping into a lake of unquenchable fire. So imagine if you had that information, if you knew for a fact that your actions would lead to an unquenchable lake of fire. At that point, wouldn't you pay any price to avoid that consequence, even losing a hand or an eye? That's what Jesus is asking you to consider in this gospel. So I'll reiterate myself one last time. I'm pretty sure we're not supposed to take Jesus' instructions today literally. Cutting off your own hand is not going to achieve anything. But then again, maybe there's something else that you're attached to in here. And maybe this something is not good for you. It leads you to sin. You are better off without it. But maybe this thing is so deeply a part of you that it might as well be the back of your own hand. At that point, Jesus is telling you, you got to get rid of it. And it's going to take nothing less than the grace of God coupled with your human determination to rid you of this harmful thing. So he says, be ready and be willing to do something that is difficult for the greater good of your soul.